really happy to have Paul Parton here today. I mean, normally you might see Paul's name associated with some of the great bylines we've had from him over the past couple of years. I've known him a long time. He's been a regular friend of Media Post and a contributor, but his byline will be showing up on his own brand new book pretty soon. And I thought it would make a good column for us to get into why he wrote this book, what he hopes to accomplish with it, and most importantly, why the readers of Media Post would be interested in what they would learn about it. Paul is the Global Chief Strategy Officer for Going, which is now part of Omnicom. Um, and he's been in the business a long time. Very strategic minded, a great account planner from training. And if you've read his columns on Media Post, you know he's a pretty smart guy. Somehow he's distilled all of this into a wonderful new book called Share of Culture, which is a provocative concept. I'm really curious about, what our audience will take away from this book. But I was going to open by asking Paul to just put in his own words, like why he chose to channel all of his insights into this baby and what he thinks readers will get out of it.
Thanks, Joe, and good to see you in this forum. Of course, I normally see you across a lunch table. Um, the, uh, I guess the fundamental reason that I wanted to try and channel insights in this forum was just to get them out of my head. Uh, there's, as you know, I've been in the business for a long time now, and over that period of time, you pick up lots of different pieces and thoughts and bits of science and practical application from lots of different areas, brands, venues, disciplines, and over time they all start to connect, they all start to coalesce, and I found that they were coalescing around a time where our media landscape has basically been turned upside down. And as a result, kind of marketing has been turned upside down. And yet, an awful lot of the practices that we're still employing are practices that we could have employed 50 years ago. Inevitably, they're not working anymore. And I just hadn't seen anybody joining those dots. So I thought I'd give it a try.
Yeah, I should caution readers, like there's a very dystopian take here in some ways, but also some very practical real world examples for how to solve some of these problems. But yes, the reality is it's a messy business. It's getting messier every day. Um, can you talk about some of the ways, some of the insights that you draw on to help people get a handle on the fact that marketing isn't working the way it used to?
The There's one very fundamental one. There's been a ton of study, a very kind of long range study done by a couple of researchers in the UK, Les Binet and Peter Fields, um, about the ideal balance of marketing budget that should be allocated in order to create effective marketing plans. Um, they they came to a very simple equation that said you should be spending about 60% of your marketing budget on long-term brand building and about 40% on short-term sales activation. So the very simple realization that you need to create demand before you capture demand. The Our media ecosystem now, the digitization of it, coupled probably with the short-termism of the global economy, has turned that almost completely upside down. In fact, more than upside down. We're now spending about 30% on average of our marketing budgets on long-term brand building and about 70% on short-term sales activation. And there's been a very predictable decline in marketing effectiveness as a result of that. But it's inevitable. You can't not do it because Google has to be paid. The shopping
Right.
cart has to be optimized. Amazon has to be paid. And but you've probably given me these numbers over time, but the amount of money that goes to these new oligarchs is just enormous. And that is coming out of a marketing budget that didn't used to have to pay those taxes. Um, and so something has to change if marketing is going to become effective again.
Well, I think you're right, and you capture very well in your book. I'm here at a media post conference on media planning and buying, and I will tell you, almost every conversation, the KPI is some form of performance or conversion, and very little talk about building brands and growing equity. I believe at some point it has to snap back, but you do give some good examples in your book of some strategies that are working. I like the plan and pivot one in particular, and the great case study you offer about the Grimace campaign. I don't want you to give away the whole book here, but if you could talk a little bit about some of the things that are working and helping the build brand, I think that would be helpful.
The fundamentally there's a very simple, I hope not simplistic, I hope it's just simple kind of algorithm that successful modern marketers are applying to build successful modern brands. And it's a two-part equation. They have to know their truth, the truth of their brand. They have to know it, they have to state it, and they have to live it. And then they've just got to get people talking about it. They've got to be provocative enough, they've got to be entertaining enough, they've got to be energetic enough to actually make people want to care and want to talk and want to post and want to tweet and want to share and want to comment, because that earned media force multiplier on their marketing activities is actually the only way they can break out of that budgeting paradox. It's the only way they can actually start to capture any kind of attention and consequently build any sort of long-term brand preference.
So in essence, it's how they compete for share of culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've spent, my whole career talking about competing for share of market, share of category, share of mind, share of voice, and all of those things are really performance metrics. Um, competing for share of culture is competing to be part of the conversation. And when you're competing to be part of the conversation, you're competing with Taylor Swift. You're competing with Donald Trump. You're not just competing with the other chocolate bar or the other can of soda. So it's a really different kind of context, and it requires brands to operate in a different way. I mean, genuinely interesting, genuinely entertaining, or genuinely useful. But it's the only way that they're going to be able to compete.
It's funny. I'm here at this media post event, and this concept I hadn't thought about before was introduced by an agency presentation that they're calling share of model, which is the next generation is going to be about competing to have the LLMs, the AI models, discussing, talking about your brands or having a brand affinity. And I think you touch a little bit on this in your book. Um, is this something you think we've come to grips with as an industry, like what the next new thing is going to be?
I think as an industry we're starting to, but I'm not sure it's a new thing. I think it's a variation on an old thing. Um, SEO, SEM was a variation on stocking fees that you would pay to a retailer. It's literally just having your product at the point of purchase, or the point of consideration. It was the digital version of that, just literally. But it was another one of those digital taxes that has upended the marketing budgeting, because marketers didn't used to pay for that. The sales team used to pay for that. Now marketers pay for it. So I think AI optimization is really it's another flavor of that same thing. It really is optimizing the bottom of the funnel. Um, it's a great, right now it's a phenomenal way to try and optimize the bottom of the funnel, because you can do it organically.
Mhm.
Like you could with Google, I don't know, 14 years
Right.
ago. So, I mean, right now it's a kind of a must do for everybody, and there are great techniques to do it, and more companies, including ours, to be honest, are doing that quite effectively. And it's really interesting. It's the Wild West, because if you my son has a small business, my wife has a small business, and we're optimizing AI for those businesses, and it's really
Mhm.
fun to do it. But it is optimizing the bottom of the funnel. It's no different to that.
Mhm.
It's not creating any kind of long-term brand salience. It's not generating, demand. One of the Actually, I'm not even sure I referenced this in the book. Probably should have done,
Well, you
but
have a sequel to come.
well, now apparently now I do. Another really simple. This is just simple um, statistic in marketing, which is the 95-5 rule. Have you come
Yeah,
across that?
sure.
Yeah, but it's so. I mean, 95% of your potential market is not in market at any
Right,
given time. Only 5% is. Um, it it's so clear. We know it's a truth, and yet we ignore it almost all the time. We spend all of our time competing for that 5%.
right.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
and
And if I could invoke a famous platitude in the industry, I know that half of my 5% is working. I just don't know which half.
yeah, yeah, that takes you down to 2.5%. That's not very good.
Well, I didn't want you to give away the whole book here, but I think you teed it up pretty good. We're going to provide a little excerpt of it from your publisher, and I encourage people to check it out, give us comments and feedback, and good luck. And I'll keep an eye out for your sequel soon.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.